did his undergrad at Stanford. He's currently in his third year medical student at Stanford. At Stanford, he was a Mayfield Fellow in the entrepreneurship program. And he's been recognized as one of the foremost thinkers in basketball and really changing the way that people and sports teams and agents think about how they put together their team and redefine players. So his talk is going to be on how you redefine an industry. And how old are you, 23? 25. But a fantastic speaker.
So we've been talking about highs and lows today. I think my high was probably being invited to speak here, but the low is definitely following a 13-year-old who invented his own Braille printer. So that's my luck. So who am I? I'm a third-year medical student. Sorry, Parag. But I'm a third-year medical student, but I've gotten to do some pretty cool things in sports analytics. And for any parents, if you want me to convince your kids why to go to med school, I'm happy to do so. I think medicine's great, and I've really enjoyed it. But today I want to talk about some stuff I got to do in basketball analytics and some lessons I learned along the way. So people used to always ask me, how did you go from this, pre-med average student, this short Indian kid, to consulting for NBA teams? And I never really had a good answer, but today I want to tell the full story. I want to share how everything kind of unfolded to get me to where I am today. And Steve Jobs famously said in his commencement speech, you can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And that's what I want to do through a series of short stories. I want to try to connect the dots looking backward. And hopefully some of the lessons that I've learned along the way will be useful to many of you on your own paths. So first of all, to get two things out of the way up front. One, I've never started a company. And luckily, there's enough people here who have that it can last this many generations. But I've never started a company. And number two is I'm not really here to give advice because I don't think I'm qualified to. But what I do want to do is two things. One, I hope to inspire you guys to what is possible. And two, I want to share some of the lessons that I've learned, hoping that it will help you as well. So let's get started. So the story starts, I want to start when I'm around 5 years old. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I was a huge Rockets fan. And I used to get to go to exactly 2 games a year with my cousin. My uncle would get free tickets, and we'd go to 2 games a year. We'd sit in the last row of the stadium, and I was so excited the whole week I'd go to those games. And we'd be the first one in the stadium, we'd be the last one to leave. And I remember I'd bring binoculars to the games to get a closer look at the action. And that's a true story. And that's really how much I loved basketball. And then as I got older, in middle school in 7th grade, I tried out for the middle school basketball team. Most middle schools don't even have tryouts, but ours did. And there was 12 spots, and there was 15 of us trying out. And believe it or not, I was one of the 3 people that didn't make the team. I'll never forget the guy who got the 12th spot on the team. He was the 6-foot-tall kid who'd never touched a basketball in his life. In fact, he never played sports in his life, but he was tall. He didn't even want to be on the team, and they forced him into it. And I didn't even want to play. I just wanted to be a part of organized basketball, and I never got that chance for the rest of my life. And that sucked for me, but that's life. But anyway, I got older. I went to high school. High school for me was pretty uneventful. Like many of you, I just did things because they were what everyone else was doing. So I was in debate. I did some science fair. I took a lot of AP classes. And to me, it didn't really matter what I did. I just tried to do it pretty well. So whether it was Spanish or whether it was Quiz Bowl or whatever it was, I just tried to do well. And I didn't really have a passion. I didn't know what that meant. I just kind of picked things and tried to get as good as I could at them. This is actually me at NCFL Nationals in high school, and I did pretty well. But really nothing extraordinary in high school. Anyway, I think I did enough things kind of well that they let me into Stanford. And I got here, and my first week here, I remember I was in my dorm, my first week in undergrad, and someone mentioned the Mayfield Fellows program. And I looked it up, and they had it's a program for 12 seniors at Stanford to study entrepreneurship for 9 months. And I remember looking up they had the resumes posted of the 12 seniors, and I looked it up, and I was blown away. I mean, these were the most talented, most impressive resumes I'd ever seen as an 18-year-old, and I was just amazed. And from that day on, I kind of became obsessed with wanting to become a Mayfield Fellow. That was like my sole goal in undergrad, was to one day when I was a senior become a Mayfield Fellow. And I don't know what that meant or what that would have entailed, but that was my goal. but I had no idea how to get there. So I kind of stumbled around college for a little while. I took classes. I took a design class because at the time, design was hot. Everyone wanted to do design. No one wanted to be an engineer. They wanted to be a designer. So I took this design class. One of my professors gave me this piece of advice to be a T-shaped person. And it's something that stuck with me for forever since then, and I want to share with you guys. And the idea of a T-shaped person is someone who has a deep area of expertise in a specific area, but then has T-shaped connections in other areas to be able to make use of that expertise. So in my case, I decided my area of expertise was going to be medicine and healthcare. That's what I wanted to know more about than anyone else. But I knew I had to have these T-shaped connections in these other fields. So I studied philosophy abroad. I did some stuff in entrepreneurship. I learned about accounting and finance. I tried to work on public speaking and writing. You know, in essence, I tried to build these T-shaped connections. The time finally came when I was a junior. I was ready to apply to the program. The Mayfield Fellows Program, I applied. I was super nervous. They interviewed me for some reason, and a week later, I found out I got in. And it was one of the happiest moments of my life. It was this dream that I'd had that finally come true, and the program was about to start. And the first week of the program, I'll never forget, we had these two guys come into class. So there's 12 of us sitting there. These two guys, alumni of the program, came in, and they were telling us about this new startup they'd founded and how they were going to revolutionize the world of photography. So they had this app, and they thought they were going to totally disrupt the photography field. And I don't really remember what they said, but I do remember how happy and excited they were about redefining an industry. That excitement, that tangible enthusiasm was so amazing to me, and I wanted to be a part of it. And before they left, the last thing they said was, our app is called Instagram. Check us out on the App Store. We hope you like the product. We all know how that turned out, but really, they were trying to redefine an industry, and I really fell in love with that concept. So anyway, it came time for me to pick a summer internship for myself as part of the program. And I'll skip the thought process in choosing the company, but I ended up at a company called Ayazdi, which I don't know if many of you have heard about, but at the time, it was a 12-person company, literally in a house in Palo Alto, hadn't raised their Series A. No one on the founding team had ever started a company before. Most of them had never even worked at a company before. And that was my idea of a summer internship. So I went there, and it was a 12-week internship. The first 6 weeks, I don't remember what happened. I was going through the motions. They told me to do something. I would do it, and it was okay. Right about week 7, I had this revelation that I was going to be a doctor, and this didn't really matter. I was playing with house money. So I said, I only have 6 weeks left, and I'm not planning on working here indefinitely. So with that limited time, what do I want to do? If I only had 6 weeks left, what do I want to do? And the idea was I wanted to do something in sports. So I asked my boss if I could do a data analysis project in sports for the company. And I want to pause there, because that's another lesson I've learned, is to act as if you have limited time. There's a phenomenon in medicine with end-stage cancer patients where patients who only have a few months left to live are often the patients who live life to the fullest. You know, they're the ones who spend time with loved ones, who are amazingly positive, who are so thankful, who travel, who follow their dreams. Really everything we all aspire to do, but it's those patients who do it best. And this is when I really felt that kind of energy. And even today, I still use that principle. Act as if you have limited time. You know, I ask myself almost every month, if I'm going to leave the Bay Area in 1 month, what do I want to do with these next 4 weekends? You know, what are the things I've always wanted to do that I've never gotten to do? And I try to force myself to think in that way. But anyway, I had 6 weeks left, so I worked on a project in sports, and I emailed a bunch of people, and I ended up kind of running the data. I took some data from Yahoo Sports, and I ran the data, and I ended up with this network where we basically had this idea that there were more than 5 positions in basketball. So traditionally, you think of 5 positions. I know everyone's probably a Warriors fan now that they're doing well. So we had this theory that there's more than 5 positions in basketball. And I emailed a bunch of people about the idea, and I emailed some pretty big names without any introduction, just cold emailed, and a lot of them got back to me. And I think thinking back, the other lesson I've learned is that surround yourself with amazing people and show them off. So I was working at a company started out of Stanford's math department, and I told everyone that would listen that exact thing. I told everyone that we were started at Stanford, that we were a math company, that we were venture-backed. And I think that's why we got so many responses. But anyway, people started to email back, and they said, this is a cool idea, but you should speak at MIT. There's this big sports conference. That's where everyone goes. So see how it works. So I went to MIT with this idea. I was the shortest person there, most likely. And they put me in this room on the side, and I gave my talk, and I left, and I thought, okay, that's that. We're done. I'm going to go home. I'm going to be a doctor, and it's going to be okay. Anyway, someone wrote about the idea, and then someone else wrote about the idea, and that happened a few times. And before long, we had gotten a pretty good amount of attention. So at the end of the conference, I actually won the award for the best talk at the conference. And I got to meet kind of my childhood hero, Daryl Morey. He's the general manager of the Houston Rockets. So the team that I grew up, sitting in the last row with binoculars watching, that's at the conference when I got to meet him. A lot of press started coming in. A few weeks later, I was invited to do a TEDx talk in Spokane on math and sports. And then things just kind of kept getting better. I was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 for sports. I don't know how. And there was a big Forbes party where I got to meet this guy. And real story, right before we took this picture, I went up to him and I was like, hey, Shaq, can I get a picture? And I promise he was eating these like real cupcakes, like bite-sized, as if they were bite-sized cupcakes. I've never seen this before. Honestly, but anyway, he took the picture with me. He was really nice about it. And the story got even better. A few months later, I was contacted by Nike and Jordan brand, and they wanted to do a project. And their idea was to do personalized shoe design, and they wanted me to help with it. And as part of the project, I got to meet someone else who I've always been a hero of, been a fan of, Michael Jordan. And that's actually in his house in Florida, is the coolest thing I've ever done. And as part of this meeting, I was going to pitch this idea to Michael Jordan, and I'm sitting elbow to elbow with him at his dining table, and I have my 11-inch MacBook Air, and his hands are bigger than the laptop, and I was super nervous. And I want to pause here, because another lesson I learned here is always have an area of expertise and have multiple areas of expertise. When I was talking to him, I realized that he knows more about basketball than me and everyone I've ever met combined, no question. So if I want to talk to him about basketball, I'm going to be on the lesser ground every single time. But the one thing I know more than Michael Jordan about was math. So for pretty much the entire 30 minutes, I talked to him about math and data visualization, and he had no choice but to listen. And he came away, he came away pretty impressed. And anyway, he said, look, I own this team called the Charlotte Hornets. I want you to go talk to some of the guys over there. So anyway, I go to Charlotte, and I walk into the room, and I'm ready to present. And I'm using the same strategy. I'm just going to talk about math. These guys know basketball. I know more math than they do, so let's do it. Anyway, they bring in 12 math PhDs who they claim are their interns. I don't know if it's true. They claim they have these interns, and they're all math PhDs who don't know anything about basketball. And then they stacked the room with a bunch of their executives as well who know more basketball than me. So now what do? I can't talk about math, and I can't talk about basketball. So I started talking about medicine. Because I was a medical student and I knew more medicine than them. So I started talking about vital signs, O2 saturation, blood pressure, dynamic force models, cardiac ejection fractions. And basically I was telling them how we could use all of these biometric parameters to measure the career longevity of players so that we know exactly when a player is going to peak, how fast they're going to decline, and how to structure contracts. And again, the lesson there is always have an area of expertise. And whenever you're talking to someone, have more than one area of expertise so you can always have the higher ground. So anyway, I'll kind of conclude there. So I had a lot of cool experiences. Just to wrap things off, they let me do a kind of a commercial with ESPN. That's actually the gym at Stanford. So that was really cool. And then the coolest thing that I've ever done is I was on the front page. You can't see it with the shadow, but that's the San Jose Mercury News, and they covered some of the sports stuff I'd done. And when Barack Obama was here, I think a year ago, he heard about the idea, and he signed the newspaper. It says, "To Muthu, good work, Barack Obama." So so it's definitely been quite a journey. But when I look back, there's been so many articles. There's been a lot of cool things I've gotten to do, and the final question I ask myself is why? Why did all of this happen? It's a cool idea, but it's not that cool, I'll be the first to admit, I don't know if it warranted the attention it got. So I asked myself, why did all of this happen? And the only answer I have is that people loved this story. They loved the story of this 5'9" Indian kid from the suburbs of Houston who went to free Rockets games with binoculars and who got cut from his middle school basketball team, who retreated to his basement with his TI-89 calculator to get revenge on the sport that told him he wasn't good enough. That's the story they loved. And that's the story people wanted to hear, so I told that story, and it's all true. So that's the last lesson I want to leave you guys with, which is have a story and tell a story. It doesn't matter if you're trying to redefine an industry or whether you're simply applying to college or applying to med school. Have a story, and we all do. People are attracted to stories, and I think it'll take you guys really far. So I started off today telling you guys about watching games in the last row just to get closer to the action. And today, thanks to Monty and all of you, I'm able to stand up here and tell my story. So thank you so much for listening.